But through this discussion already, we've put out the R word. We started with the T word. I want to come to the R word, Russia. Should India end its neutrality in the Ukraine-Russia? And I'm going to put the G word also, Gaza wars, because there's a sense that, yes, Sinha, India hasn't taken a strong stand either way. They've sat on the fence on Ukraine-Russia. Now the US president is calling India out, saying, you can't buy oil from Russia. There have been those who've been critical about our approach towards Gaza as well, that we haven't taken a moral stand. But to Russia first, principally, do you believe that that is an intrusion in our strategic autonomy when a US president says, you've got to stop buying oil from Russia or I'm going to impose penalties on you?
Rajdeep, I think, there is a history now as far as Ukraine and Russia are concerned. I mean, it's ironic that the US itself is buying uranium and rare earths from Russia. You have Europe buying gas from Russia. So how can they tell us not to buy oil from Russia? Now, obviously, they have got benchmarks, $60 per barrel. We've not exceeded that amount. And our petroleum ministers on record saying that since we import 86% of our energy needs, and we are a developing country, we buy from where the cheapest. It will help us in our economic growth and development. And we have about 40 odd suppliers. So I think it's not, I mean, Ambassador K.C. Singh would remember that when Iran was under sanctions, we were still buying oil from Iran. We opened escrow accounts, etc., but the amounts were dwindling. They came down. So, I mean, it's not that we don't have any experience on how to handle this. Of course, this is much bigger. It's the United States. It's the biggest economy. And I, for one, am quite baffled as to, the fact that you want to punish, even BRICS. You're talking about BRICS. When President Trump talks about which is India that's actually holding the line as far as the so-called, in inverted commas, de-dollarization is concerned, or a separate currency is concerned. So I think, it's really quite ironic, but I'll wait and see. I'm not going to sort of
so let's
give my final verdict now.
Let me get Daniel to give us a US perspective. Explain, Daniel, why suddenly is Donald Trump so worried about India purchasing oil from Russia? Is it simply a tactic, a negotiating tactic? Is he trying to send a message out, not just to New Delhi, but somewhere to Moscow as well? Is he increasingly frustrated with Vladimir Putin and then taking out the frustration on Prime Minister Modi and India?
I think it's a good question and a difficult question. I think the answer you suggested, that would be my best guess as to what's going on, is that it's both. It's a combination of the two factors you laid out. On the one hand, this is another way for him to get at India economically and to indicate his frustration with the way India is conducting trade talks and to try and amp up the pressure, as it were, on India as the two states conduct trade negotiations. So I think that's column A. And then I think column B as well is his increasing frustration with Vladimir Putin. And this is a very recent and relatively rapid shift we've seen with Trump. I mean, for the first several months of his administration, he was quite sympathetic to Russia relative to previous US presidents. And now he's not. And once he kind of changed his mind on it, he decided to apply pressure relatively quickly to get back into the business of arming Ukraine in a pretty forceful way, and now to try and find new ways to amp up economic pressure on Russia. But again, as everybody said throughout this program, the president is mercurial. He changes his mind often. So I wouldn't be surprised if in a week he's changed his tune on Russia and on the sanctions related to it.
Andrew, do you believe that India should, at least on penalties being or threatened against India for trading in oil with Russia, for purchasing oil from Russia, should India simply be sticking to its stand, saying Russia has been an ally of India or a great supporter of India through the years, and therefore India will do what is in India's interest?
India will do what's in India's interest, just like every other country on the face of the earth. And what we see happening here, I think Trump and his administration understand that this is a multipolar moment. It's not the unipolar post-Cold War era when America could do whatever it wanted. It's got contenders, peer competitors, China being the most obvious, and then one rung down a bunch of other competitors. What he doesn't understand is some of the knock-on effects of that, one of which is multi-alignment. that countries around the world, from Saudi Arabia to India, even to Canada in some ways, are willing to be on Team China once in a while and Team USA for some issues. And that's both a function of multipolarity, but it's also, in India's case, a function of a long history. India is dependent on Russia for replacement parts for Soviet-era weapons, for example. It also has to be said that the global South doesn't treat the war in Ukraine the way Europeans and North Americans do, as the most important thing that's ever happened in human history. I've heard Indians say, that's Europe's problem, it's not our problem. We're going to do what's in our best interest, and which is not condemning Russia necessarily or overtly, and buying their oil at discount rate, because that's what's good for Indian consumers and Indian industry. That makes perfect sense to me. But the logic of that seems to be lost on President Trump and the boys. They seem not to understand. There are things they can negotiate with India, and then there are things that are non-negotiable with India. Some of them have to do with domestic politics, and some have to do with geopolitical orientation, this multi-alignment phenomenon, which has deep, deep roots in Indian foreign policy.